The lawsuit that's been all over the headlines nationwide about real estate brokers and fees.
Typically, in a real estate transaction, when you hire somebody to sell your home, you agree to pay a fee, and then typically a percentage of that, which is usually broker's discretion, to split some portion of that fee to a buyer's agent. To simplify, that's no longer going to be permitted, right? Buyers are going to have to basically sign with their agent.
Yeah, they're going to have to be able to define that relationship, right? There'd have to be buyer broker agreements, and the bottom feeders of the industry will leave.
Yeah.
And then those that are really professional will stay because they're going to say, how do I level myself up?
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Blueprint for Closers, episode 22. We're here with our co-host, Rob Nixon. What's up, Rob?
How are you? How's it going?
Good. And we have a guest today, Mike Napolitano from RE/MAX Edge. How you doing, Mike?
How are you, doing?
Thanks for coming today. We really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
We have a lot to talk about, specifically the lawsuit that's been all over the headlines nationwide about real estate brokers and fees, which I still didn't understand. But before we get into that, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Who's Mike? Where'd you come from? So, Mike, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you come from?
Yeah, so I'm Mike Napolitano. I'm CEO of RE/MAX Edge. Grew up in Brooklyn. Still live in Bay Ridge, Brooklyn right now. Got 5 office locations. One at Staten Island, 4 in Brooklyn. Over 150 salespeople at my firm.
And growing up in Brooklyn, tell us a little about your life. Public school, private school. What were some hobbies you went to?
How'd you get into real estate?
Yeah, so grew up in Bensonhurst, Brooklyn. Went to public school, humble beginnings, to say the least. Yeah, so I have an interesting story on how I got into real estate. So I was always a hustler, always did all kinds of odds and ends things to pay bills in the house. And, was interesting. I was doing nightclub promotions. I was in college. I was doing nightclub promotions, working 2-3 jobs on the side as well. And through nightclub promotions, I actually met my mentor. If you remember the nightclub Limelight, somebody remember Limelight?
Sure.
And, basically booked a party for his daughter. And, one thing led to another. We met outside of the club, not literally outside the club. And he said, "You ever thought about getting into real estate?" And my mother always said, get a real job, get something stable, not on commission. And after a month or two, I decided to take the plunge. Because my response to him was, my mom said that don't take this job. And they asked me, he's like, "Well, what are you going to do?" I said, "I want to work for the census." And I got a whole bunch of other things working out. The census, I was going to actually go around and get people to...
How old are you at this point?
18, turning 19. Up to so.
I didn't go to Limelight. Was it a private party when the club was closed, or was it a party during the
party? I was just one of these like orders, handing out flyers. I did team parties before that at the Cotillion Terrace, so if anybody knows that. But yeah, it was a Limelight through a friend. It wasn't, bottle service who was under 21, so it was just a matter of through a friend. They're like, "Hey, our friends are looking to go to the club. What do you got for us? Can you give some comps?" And I said, "Yeah, of course." So, of course, being the networker I am, when the party was over, they would say, "Hey, just don't forget about me in the future. If you ever need anything, let me know." And actually, they invited me to breakfast afterwards at the Vegas Diner.
Yeah.
Favorite spot. And I went in and, hung out with the whole, friends and family. And then got a call next couple of days just asking, "Hey, you ever thought about real estate?" And I'm like, "Real estate? I've got this promotion business. I'm working at amusement park Nellie Bly in Brooklyn." And I said, I got a lot of things going. I know a lot of things going on, Okay. So, so young,
Yeah.
So I was telling these adults, I got a lot of things going on.
You thought you knew it all and had it all planned out, but you just don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah. And it's funny, they followed up with me. My mentor and his wife, they were like, "Hey, you think about real estate?" I was like, No. And then finally I said, "You know what? I'm gonna try it."
So when you went into real estate, did you actually work for this mentor? Or?
Yeah, I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
And he was a broker?
He was a broker, the mom and pop firm in Brooklyn, Bensonhurst, Brooklyn.
Still around?
They actually wound up closing, and they joined my firm now.
Oh, good. That's a cool story.
Yeah. They were in business at that point for over 50 years. Small mom and pop, and it's where I got my start. Where literally I started just learning, and I was basically an assistant to them. But it really where I got not only the discipline to learn real estate, but also salesmanship as well. You know,
For sure.
like Tom Hopkins. I don't know if you've ever heard of Tom Hopkins, but a big sales trainer from like an old school. Let's go one. Sweat Hogs, as I don't know, but like from years ago, sitting down on my way to school with a Walkman and a cassette player on the way to school, just listening to these different sales training courses. Very good. He was
Which are really effective at times.
yeah, it was amazing. Like being on the bus, just listening to Tom Hopkins, and it sounds so dry, by the way,
Yeah.
at the time, right? I mean, I'm like, hustle, and it's like, so when you walk in, talk about the paperwork, not the contract. But it sounds so like, you know, monotone.
Yeah.
Talk with the paperwork, not the contract. I never forgot that. So,
So fast forward now, you join Remax, right? So 150 agents, 5 offices. You guys have done over $1 billion a year in sales, roughly, right? So tremendous numbers. That's amazing growth. How long have you been with Remax now?
So Remax on the brokerage side, 7 years, but with the brand for a total of 15 years.
That's pretty spectacular. So how did you get this massive growth? So what are some of the benefits of being with a franchise like Remax, for example? You know, what are those things that you found?
Yeah. What made you leave, like, from working for someone to doing your own thing? Like, what pushed you over that hump?
Yeah, so I was with a mentor for about 8 years, and I was going to go to law school, so I kind of hit a crossroad. So I decided, you know what, after that, you know, it was a small office, but big, small but big, right? So I decided, I got to get out there. I want to change the trajectory of my business. So I joined Remax as an individual agent. Fast forward, winning all the accolades. Had a 7-figure revenue business as a team at Remax, and then I decided to, I'm going to pivot into the brokerage end of the business because what I saw in the industry, what's interesting, there's several levels of agents in the business, right? There's that person who's getting in, or they dabble, and then there's the mid tier and there's the top tier. When I say mid tier, top tier, someone's growing their business, team business, big team business. So what I decided to do is, it's crazy. I wanted to open the quote unquote open my playbook, right? My blueprint. And then I wanted to focus primarily on those that are committed to the business. It doesn't have to be the person who's making $1 million, but someone says, this is what I want to do. And unfortunately, and we're probably going to cover this later with NAR, this business is flooded with people that are just dabbling in at a part-time, and that's not my model. And in terms of Remax, it's a brand that people know. They know, like, and trust. Sure. So people know my brand.
How long has Remax been around?
50 plus years. So, but then opening the playbook to agents who, all levels, but committed, right? So I've had agents start with me at 0, get to 250,000 revenue, from 0 to $1 million plus in revenue, and beyond. So, I really pride myself, and our organization prides themselves on being able to help those agents who are committed to get to whatever level they want. Because I used to think, Rob, that everybody wanted to make $1 million plus in business. And what I learned was
Same. I used to think that.
Yeah, and what I learned was some people, even who are entrepreneurs and want this business, some people want to have that they want to go home at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. Some people want the weekends off. Some people want to get to a certain level, and that's it. And that's what I learned. That's okay. And then you got your heavy hitters who want to go beyond. Just like the world is, it's endless. So I really, really enjoy helping those folks out, because it really just it gives me my energy to see that person. I lead by that, like my mentor. When the student is ready, the teacher shall appear. Because I used to chase people like, hey, Don, what you want to know about real estate? And then when I learned that you're spinning your wheels, because that person, they have to be ready to learn. They have to be open. Just like when I was getting started, I wasn't necessarily ready for everything.
Do you still broker deals, or do you essentially take care of the office and recruit? Is that basically your job?
Primarily, helping and supporting our agent and teams, because they're our customers, right? And so at the end of the day, giving them what they need. Of course, to take on some of my old clients in the past, but typically we're working together in group in terms of supporting that transaction. But my day-to-day is consisting of building a better experience for my agents so they can build a better experience for their customers.
Right. So one of my pet peeves of this industry is that barriers to entry are pretty small. right? I mean, it's not very hard to get your real estate license. And what I was always bothered with is that when somebody is not liking their job, it's always, or they lose a job, it's I'm going to get my real estate license, right? It's always a thing that, everyone just thinks it's easy, you can make money and it's going to be that simple. It's just not how it works. It's a very difficult business, but it also, in some ways, lowered professionalism to some extent in some areas. Now, we haven't covered this topic. It's a super hot button topic, and I think it's really important, and you're a great person to speak on it, considering how many agents and how this affects the industry as a whole. But so NAR, all these different things that have come out, buyer agency, can you kind of summarize a little bit like what's actually happening, and then what does it really mean for agents, consumers, and sellers?
So as a disclaimer, I'm not an attorney, so I could be able to speak on that. But I will say this, though. The level of professionalism needs to step up. I've been very fortunate that in our firm, we have 15 languages spoken. So it's interesting, with 15 languages spoken, people come from all over the world, and they might have been a doctor, they might have been a nurse, they might have been a teacher, or whatever country that they're from. And what's interesting, this is their opportunity, because when they arrive here, potentially now they're working at a restaurant. They might be working just odds and ends jobs to make ends meet, right? I met a guy recently who's getting a license, and he was essentially a CPA back at his home in the Ukraine. And he says, yeah, I was a CPA back there, but he can't get a job here because he's not a CPA. But the guy wants to do real estate, right? He's an entrepreneur, right? He has his own firm back at home. With what's going on over there. So he's here and he's just trying to get out there and do real estate. So, I experience things a little bit different, but the same in terms of like the talent pool that we're working with. This might be the end of the road. Besides having the entrepreneurial spirit, saying this is the end of the road, saying, listen, I'm going to go out and build my business. And the beautiful thing is they don't necessarily need to set up brick and mortar, right? We have everything for them, the training, the insurance, everything that they could possibly need to get their business up and running. But pivoting back to what you said about the NAR settlement agreement, and there's so much there.
Right, just high level, because I think most people, I
think the key is transparency, right? I think as a consumer, we've consistently, in terms of what we've been trying to do, is turn the lights on, right? It's keep making sure that everyone's in the loop of what's going on in the transaction. And again, this is not about the case. This is more about what I'm seeing is that at the end of the day, the buyer customer doesn't really necessarily understand the fact that, there's a commission involved that is potentially coming out of the proceeds, right? So,
sure, most buyers don't know at all.
They don't know. And transparency is the key, right? Would they think differently if they knew how much commission that they're paying their professional? And the seller also is kind of like didn't really understand that, hey, part of that is going to they knew, right? They knew part of the commission that they set along with the agent is going to the buyer's agent, the broker's agent, whatever relationship they have. Again, those are legal descriptions, but I'm not an attorney. But I would say that, the transparency is going to be the key here. And I agree with you. I think that now with this transparency, I do believe that the entrepreneur, the one that is dedicated, the one that really, really loves this industry is going to come out way, way ahead of this, because what's going to happen is as we start getting used to the new way of doing business, however it's going to be outlined, I think what's going to happen is the agents who are dedicated are going to go back. Like right now, I know NAR was offering the ADR, which is accredited buyer representation, right, to really level up the experience. And that's not a pitch for it. It's just saying, hey, you know what? How do you treat that customer, right? When you walk in to almost any professional, kind of know what you're getting into. The relationship. Right out the gate. I mean, you're working in commercial alive, right? At the end of the day, as soon as you meet the customer, you have to tell them who you work for, right? They say, hey, I'm working for the owner. I'm working for you, the tenant. So same thing here. What happens is the buyer comes in and there's been some confusion, right? Who do you really work for?
Right. Where does your fiduciary responsibility work?
Right. And from state to state, it's different. in terms of how that all goes down, especially New York versus New Jersey are really, really two completely different places.
Yeah, for sure. And even Manhattan is so different from here. So just to be clear, typically in a real estate transaction, when you hire somebody to sell your home, you agree to pay a fee, whether that's 4%, 5%, 6%, whatever it may be. And then typically a percentage of that, which is usually broker's discretion, to split some portion of that fee to a buyer's agent, right?
Yeah, all commissions have always been negotiable, and I think that's another thing that the consumer, an agent should always say the commission is negotiable even when they meet. And I think that's another thing is that potentially there have been some misunderstandings, but the commission has always been negotiable. I'm pretty excited for, I'm not excited for what happened with this case. I mean, it sounds pretty, it looks.
So what it means now, to simplify, is that that's no longer going to be permitted, right? Buyers are going to have to basically sign with their agent. Is that the best way to put it?
Yeah, they're going to have to be able to define that relationship, right? There'd have to be buyer broker agreements. In New York, for example, each firm has a standard operating procedure. So is it exclusive versus non-exclusive agreements? So that's still up in the air. And that's coming up very soon.
So I'm still trying to understand the premise of it, right? So me not being a real estate agent or broker, right? So I'm going to buy a house. You're representing the seller. You're representing me.
Right.
The seller pays the agent. The seller made the deal with Rob. You're going to pay me 4% for this listing. You call Rob. You say you have a buyer. Me. Now, in the fine print is how much you're getting from the deal written on the MLS, let's just say notes, that, okay, he's splitting the commission with with a buyer's agent that comes to the table, right? So essentially, he'd be getting 2%, you'd be getting 2% on the sale. So what's the lawsuit? The lawsuit is that description or that agreement wasn't really advertised to the public, or wasn't advertised between the buyer and seller agents. What is the actual premise of the lawsuit? If he negotiated 4% and he offered to pay half of his commission to whoever buying agent brought, was the...
Purely by example, there's commission that's paid to seller, some way negotiable with buyer's agent. What changes?
Yeah, so what happens is right now, the listing agent determines what to pay the buyer's agent, what portion to pay. And it basically, and again, no real, there's no legal explanation. It's just from my understanding of the case, in terms of the buy side of the deal, the buyer to get the opportunity to negotiate their portion of the commission. The buyer themselves, right? So, let's say the commission is X dollars. They had no say in, can it be less or more? I understand. Right? That's kind of the simplistic way of looking at it. The buyer has no control of it.
But why would it matter to them if the seller's paying it?
It's inflationary, right? So again, it could inflate the price. If they knew it's coming out of the proceeds, because the seller's paying from the proceeds, but on their side of the transaction, they're not able to kind of control what they pay for it, right?
Right.
So it's being kind of spelled out by the actual.
So that's the premise of the suit. The premise of the suit is, so in the future, how does that get corrected? It's pretty difficult because the buyer doesn't exist until the house is on the market.
Well, I think it's more, these are interesting. I think that the buyer will meet their agent. They'll have a conversation. That people could, just like a lot of times when you sit down with the homeowner and you're the listing agent. I mean, you sit down and it's usually a proper presentation. Usually it's an hour, 15 minutes or so. You're sitting down saying, this is all you get for what you pay. And then there's the buy side commission, right? That's where you talk to the current set, right? Okay, then there's a buy side, a percentage of X commission we're going to pay to the buy side, and that's it. It's being basically predetermined by that sit. Whereas potentially now the buyer's agent will now have the same conversation with the buyer saying, hey, these are the services I provide. Go down the list of services they provide, and this is what it'll cost you. What I think, and again, this is kind of bold, but I think what will happen over time is that there'll be less people just like, I don't want to call it tire kicking, right? Because it goes back to like the Tom Hopkins thing I said earlier today. Like just, I think there'll be more people who are saying, hey, if I'm going to go out and look, I'm going to engage with a professional. There may be less of that now. I don't know, but I think that again, you're in the architectural business, right? You have a consult with your clients, and again, stopping you for you have a consult with your clients, and then you send them the fee structure, like, hey, this is the consult, this is what's going to cost you, and they say, well, I like the services or I don't, and then so I think that's just going to happen. And not I think, I mean, pretty confident that now buyers sitting down. I mean, imagine you had 100 people saying, you know what, maybe I'll use you, and but I'm thinking about doing this architectural project 10 years from now.
Right.
And it would just drown you.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that, yes, potentially there'll be a lot less inquiries online. I know Rob has some, over the years, we've talked about inquiries online, right? Leads, they call it, but, humans inquiring about property. I mean, take it back old school for a second to when I worked at this small mom and pop shop. He's told me, Mike Dementor's told me stories from years ago, right? The customer would walk in off the street, right? So today, that doesn't happen. Literally, when a listing goes up, you can have 100 inquiries. And it's just perceived like, oh my goodness, everybody's ready to go. No, it's just people who have that like Amazon-like experience. They press a button and they want magic to happen, right? Just to press a button, we want something to spit out at us. So this is the way the industry has been operating for the past, almost a decade now, especially this, the internet era of, leads inquiring online. So if anything, I think that'll consolidate a bit, right? I think the industry, and, I don't want to be quoted necessarily on this, but I think it generates like 4 or 5 times more inquiries, maybe more, than actual transactions in the United States, which is crazy, right? We were averaging around 4.7 million transactions in the United States, and it's four times more inquiries on property than there are transactions. It's 4 times more people who are just curious about property. And it's not saying that people shouldn't be curious about property, but I think this will start to rein in the process. I actually think it'll be more streamlined. I think it'll be more like, hey, if you're looking, for property 5 years from now, you can inquire online, you can consult maybe on Zoom. Right. We've been coaching our agents out on it. What's wrong with having a 15-minute Zoom conversation about someone's goals maybe 3 years from now? But the way it works today is, right, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rob, but today, the way it works today, consumer clicks a button, there's a couple of questions that are asked on the phone, and boom, right to the property.
Yeah.
Yeah. And potentially it's a frustrating.
And with that, there is a lack of transparency at times where you are reaching out and you never know if you're necessarily getting to the listing agent, right? And so there's a lack of transparency.
Yeah. So I'm kind of familiar with the case. I'm going to ask some questions for people that aren't familiar with it at all. But to be clear, in the future, the buyer will have a separate agreement and get paid a separate commission than the listing agent?
Well, that's what's being hashed out now. Right. There's been talks of concessions, meaning that the seller will still offer. Recently, there was a quote. Again, this is a quote that was in Risk Media that the DOJ said, Department of Justice said, there'll be no offers of compensation to be printed anywhere. So there's a lot of statements being put out there. But from the simplistic side of it, I would say that the consumer would just have number one, transparency, right? They're going to get transparency like, hey, if you're a buyer, you're sitting down with me. Let's get 15 minutes on Zoom before we get started. And I just think it's more pure, right? In the architectural business, you're consulting with somebody for maybe 15 minutes, a half hour. I'm not saying you. And at that, you decide like, maybe they're not going to do that project. Maybe they're not going to do that kitchen or bathroom, whatever it is that they need to do to their house. They're going to move on and maybe decide in 5 years. Right. The way it works today, imagine, and maybe there are some architects, I don't know your business, but imagine that every time someone to do a kitchen or a bath or whatever they need for it to get a permit, that you'd have to go to their house, sit down with them. I don't know how much business you have to do. I think it'd be a long run.
Listen, the truth is, I'm looking to buy a home, let's just say in Poconos. I can go on Zillow on a Friday night at midnight, find the person's cell phone that's kind of linked to the listing. Maybe it's the representative, maybe it's not, right? And the next day, without any vetting, I can look at 15 homes, right? They have no idea if I'm serious. They have no idea if I have the money, if I qualify. and just go and see out. So I do agree on that point as a consumer, right? As a person that is a buyer in real estate, like this should be, I can come tomorrow, like you're not going to ask me for a proof of funds or anything, and they just open those. And
Well, think about it, right? So let's say there's 5 million transactions done in the United States, right? But forget about 4 times. Let's say even two, 3 times. Let's call it 10 million human beings inquiring about property. 10 million human beings inquiring about property. That's a lot of spinning. Where I can't imagine what it was like, even though I've been in the industry 23 years, I can't imagine what it was like 30 years ago, 40 years ago. I don't think there was that many people inquiring about property, meaning in terms of on the residential buyers, buying and selling. I don't think there's that many people inquiring. I think that when people were inquiring, they would show up to the office, right, to this little office. Been in the business 50 years. There's 400 square feet. They'd sit down. They'd have a coffee. And they say, okay, well, what are your goals? Because, right, the process was so slow back then. And they would go look at it. And yes, there's always going to be tire kickers, right? You have open house, people just curious about property.
No, but it's become like a hobby.
It's become like, oh my goodness, I might look at a house, I might be interested in buying a house 5 years from now. And let's just click the button and he just starts going, and what's interesting, back to our point earlier, which is part-timers, no-timers, even those folks, because it's so excited to get a little ping in your phone. Actually, they're giving some time of day to these folks, and then they're taking those folks out to look at property. And listen, the reality is, as customers, we have been trained today that try before you buy, right? We click a button, it comes to your house, maybe some clothing, you try it on, you send it back, but it's gotten out of control, right? So it's like there's a lot of things going on, but I'm on the optimistic side. I'm on the side of consolidation of the industry is about to happen. But here's what I can say. But I think across the board that there'll be a better system and process in place. And I think there'll be more opportunities for the agents who are professional in this business. I think that, yes, commissions potentially will come down, right? But then what happened was with less agents, I think that everyone's going to win. I think the consumer will win because commission will come down a little bit. And I know some people may not want to hear that, but the reality is the consumer has to win as well for all of us to win, right? I'm a consumer, you're a consumer, so it has to come down a little bit. And then at the end of the day, the ones at the bottom feeders of the industry will leave. Yeah. And then those that are really professional will stay because they're going to say, how do I level myself up? No matter what industry you're in, whether you're an architect, an attorney, most people just leveling themselves up. So I think that's what we're going to improve the experience.
You'll be spinning your wheels way less because you're probably showing houses half the time to people that are really serious. We know firsthand an exciting home into the market. Most people want to come and just check out the house, not even interested in buying it.
Well, yeah, right. That, for the net people, proper agents, you make sure that people are pre-qualified and, capable of buying homes. But yeah, the industry's changing for sure. This industry has been, pretty stable for quite some time, despite a lot of change, especially technologically. And it's definitely going to change, I think, for the better as well. There's also been some other things that have been proposed about us going W-2. That would be a huge change for the industry. That would be an especially large change, I would think, for bigger firms like yourself, which we'll see where that goes as well. So,
Mike, just to change a little bit the topic, you're not the number one broker in Brooklyn. Is that fair to say?
Brooklyn MLS, yeah.
Brooklyn MLS. Mm-hmm. You're only in business on your own 7 years. Now, we did mention coaching earlier. Rob and I are big fans of coaching. I have a coach. What do you think you did different that in the course of 7 years got you to the top?
What's seriously different? I think it's execution. I think that's the big difference. I think people talk about what they're going to do. And you just got to execute. And I'm not perfect. I don't think any entrepreneur is perfect. But just go out there and just a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. Not poof. It's just a little bit more. And really just be focused on, helping those that want to be helped. Because unfortunately, there's plenty of people out there that say they want help, and they don't make changes. And not only just as humans anyway, right? So they don't make changes. And so I think I focus primarily on those that want to be helped. and building a better experience for our agents. I think that's been really the key factor. I think at a reasonable expense for the agent. I think too many companies they're overseeing how much they're actually offering the agent and taking more from the agent. Whereas I think we pretty much have a good compensation package for our agents where they can also invest back into their business. Because we really focus primarily on the agent that's trying to focus on building their business and then supporting them in any way, shape that they can, but not, how can you say, over support? Because every agent, every team, it's a different way they want to build their business.
Right.
Some people are having to tech. Some people in that belly to belly, let's go to every single event. Everybody's a little bit different, and we have something for everyone that's willing to work. So in the short period of time, I would say the key is execution, and then follow our customer, which are our agents, right? If an agent sees an opportunity where we're seeing more market share in certain areas, because our agents are focused on that, the way I like to work it is this. First, before we can expand into a market, we have to satisfy our customer. Meaning, if our agents are in a certain market, we want to make sure we have a flagship location for them in that particular market so they can go out there and do more business for their current customers and the new customers. So that's really been what I focus on. I see what transactions we do, and we focus primarily on that. Now for the next hot neighborhood, my focus is, what do our agents see? Where do our agents want to take us?
Right. 7 years, 5 offices, did over $1 billion the last 2 years.
Each year.
Right. $1 billion and $1 billion. Huge. 7 years from now, where do you imagine you or Remax Edge?
What I look at is, because it's hard to imagine even the 5 locations we're at in the billion. It's really hard. But I would say, if you say 7 years from now, let's take it to 500 real estate professionals. And in terms of money, I don't know where exactly that's going to go. I'm a big thinker, big visionary, but I'm not focusing on the money. I'm focusing on, if we're able to get those 500 dialed in sales professionals, sales teams in there, I think
Then the growth is inevitable.
the growth is inevitable, following our customer, delivering to our customer so they can deliver to their customer better. That is paramount to us. If our agents can do more business for their customers, then we're winning. And then those customers are satisfied because we're able to deliver on that experience. And then I think that, it just, getting to the amount of market share that we currently have just in the Brooklyn West alone, and then now continuing to build on Staten Island, it's incredible. But I have to really, it's a team effort, between our great leadership and operations team to our agents and team leaders. I mean, it's absolutely incredible. Everybody's committed.
We always like to wrap up with a highlight to your career or a funny story, interesting story. I don't know what yours might be you want to share, but you did mention an agent came in earning $0 and you brought them to over $1 million. I mean, I'd like to hear more about that story, but is there a story you'd like to share that was a highlight or memorable in your career?
There's so many of these stories. I can go down the list of, agents who we said before, 15 languages spoken. And then when they sit across the table saying, hey, I want to get this business a shot. You just don't know, because it's more about how they're going to show up to work every day. Are they going to be tenacious? Are they going to be persistent? I could think of so many agents. I think of one now. He came inside the office, sat down, spoke to me here. He had another business go, but he says leaving that business. I said, no, this guy's got an entrepreneurial spirit at zero. And I know now today, fast forward, the guy every year makes consistently over $500,000 a year in revenue. And I just think, seeing these stories time and time again where people have been able to buy homes, investment properties, just building their business even bigger. I mean, those are the stories that I look for. When I was in the transaction side of the business, I mean, I've got so many stories. I had one story when I was this was heard, but I gotta tell you this one story. I went to the house, knocked on the door, they invited me in. And it was on the side street. It was a dead-end street, right? So knock on the door. Guy opens the door. And interesting man. Very old, elderly man. Come to the door. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay. He says, all right, come on in, son. So, okay. And, he's a little, somewhat disheveled. So we walk in, and then he starts screaming in the basement, honey, the real estate agent's here. I said, okay. He's going to come downstairs to the basement. So I walk downstairs to the basement, and it's creepy. The house is really in pretty bad shape. Says, okay. I said, you want me to go down to the basement? He goes, yeah, I can't go down to the basement. I can't. But my wife's down there. So I walk down, and I'm like, all right, this is the end for me. This is the end. I really was feeling creeped out. Honestly, I walk downstairs and creaking. It's like, and I see the lights flashing like it was out of a horror movie. I'm like, oh my God. I said, are you sure your wife's down here? Then I hear, son, come on downstairs. I'm like, what is going on? So then I see this lady sitting in a barber chair. And she's sitting just in a barber chair. And she's like, the boiler room's over there. I'm like, what is she doing? And I says, I literally, if I can run fast, I ran right out that house. Because I was like, all right, yeah. So you sure you guys want to sell? They're like, we're thinking about it still. Like, you know what? You can continue to think about it. I don't know. I'm going to go. There's so many creepy stories. I mean, I can go on and on and on about the, creepy stories. But
There are some good ones.
oh, forget it.
Orders. I've had some crazy orders.
Oh, wait, I got one more story. One more. It's crazy. So I get to the house, open house. This house was on the market for so long. Can't even tell you how long it was on the market. This was in the middle of the downturn, the economic downturn. So now it's a Sunday, and every agent can relate to this. It's a Sunday, like, oh my gosh, another open house at the same price now. The same price. I said, who's going to show up today in the middle of the summer? So I walk over my open house stuff, everything. So I'm about to get in front of the house, about to set the balloons up and all this, and I'm hearing helicopters coming down. I'm like, what's going on? All of a sudden, I'm seeing people just scramble. I'm like, I don't even know what to do. People coming out, cop cars everywhere. Oh my gosh, it's crazy. Helicopters, boom. Anyway, it happened to be somebody was running from the cops. They ran down the block, jumped over the fence. I'm scrambling. Some guy has a camcorder. That's how long I've been in the industry. So yeah, camcorder recording. And guys like, no, go over there, buddy. Go over there. And before you know it, everybody's gone. Open house started at 1 o'clock. Supposed to start at 1 o'clock. They start the open house at 1:20. After all these months, I found to sell the house. Can you imagine? After all this, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is the end. This helicopter. I mean, I was scared for my wife. Helicopters, cop cars, the big SUVs pulling down. It was dead in a block.
That's awesome.
I mean, you just go on. And then there's the success stories, just, somebody who just really was counting on you, was expecting one price and then got way more than they expected. I mean, I have a slew of those, but those, I think the craziest stories, I think a lot of people, I call it the other $1 million listing, it was like this word, I think the property was like $800,000. When I tell people, like, yeah, it was a chopper coming down. They're like, should it be? I'm like, yeah. Even the house that the lady was in the basement, even that property is probably like 800,000, 900,000. This is 2008, 2009.
Wow.
So, people talk about, Mike, what did you sell before you got into the broker business? I'm like, it's the other $1 million. I'm not to that. And oh, look at this beautiful fireplace. I'm like, well,
look at this.
yeah,
I don't know.
But they just showed
This one.
It just showed me that, Stack Island, the Brooklyn, I mean, it's the amount of value that these homes have. Because someone will buy the house for $1 million and then dump 500,000 into it because they really want to be in New York.
Yeah.
New York is still alive.
This was great. This is a really good one. Very insightful. Thanks for coming, man.
Thanks, Mike. This is a great. Thank you, Mike.
All right, man.